At Sunday dinner, my dad announced, "Your brother is the only one who actually works hard in this family." Everyone at the table started clapping. I smiled and said, "Then I guess he won't need the $3,000 I've been paying for his rent every month." My brother nearly choked on his drink, and Mom quietly said his name in shock. And then, "My name's Cindy. I'm 27, and I've always been the one in the family who kept her head down, worked, paid her bills, and never expected much in return. No drama, no big speeches. But this story starts with one thing I did laugh at. A text from my mom. It came on a Thursday afternoon. I was halfway through a spreadsheet at work when it popped up. Sunday dinner, 6 p.m. sharp. Huge news. We're celebrating Kyle. I actually laughed out loud. Celebrate Kyle. I almost replied with, what did he finally remember to change the batteries in the smoke detector? I didn't send that. Instead, I replied, what for? Mom didn't answer. A few hours later, she followed up with, your dad invited everyone. Grandma's coming. Uncle Mike, Aunt Lydia, even Sarah and Dean are driving in. It's big. That stopped me. Everyone, for Kyle, my brother, who hasn't held a real job in over a year, who forgets to reply to texts unless he needs money, who I've been quietly supporting for 9 months because apparently I'm the only one who gets it. But Kyle, I didn't believe it, but I was curious. And if my dad had orchestrated this whole production, I wanted to know what he considered huge. So I showed up. Sunday came in. The house looked like a Hallmark card. Streamers, extra chairs around the table. One of those store-bought cakes with generic frosting that read congratulations in uneven red letters. I walked in and immediately caught the scent of Mom's baked CD, which only comes out during holidays or when someone wins a custody battle. I asked her, what are we celebrating? She smiled and said, just wait until everyone's seated. That didn't feel normal. My family doesn't do suspense. We do leftovers, paper plates, and side comments. The table was full. People were laughing, sipping wine, complimenting Mom's cooking. Kyle showed up 15 minutes late, of course. Aviators on his head, holding his phone like he was waiting for an important call. He kissed Grandma on the cheek, called my aunt darling, and did the whole I'm so busy act he puts on when he wants attention. Then my dad stood up, glass in hand, big smile on his face. The room quieted. To Kyle. He said, the first one in the family to buy a car off the lot. A 2020 BMW full package paid for by his own hard work. The room erupted. Grandma clapped. Rachel gasped. Dean did that obnoxious whistle he does when someone gets a promotion. I sat there blinking. The car. That's the huge news. Kyle pulled out his phone and started showing pictures. Shiny silver leather interior dealership sign in the background. I asked, how do you pay for that? He shrugged. I've been grinding, saving, finally making some moves. I tilted my head. What moves? He dodged the question. And then my dad looked at me smiling and said the one sentence that hit like a punch to the face. Your brother's the only one who works hard around here. Laughter. Applause. I didn't even blink. I just said, then he won't need the $3,000 I cover for his rent each month. Silence. Kyle choked. Literally choked on his wine. Mom whispered his name. Then came the questions. First from my cousin Sarah. Wait, you pay his rent? And then from Uncle Mike. $3,000 a month? You serious? I didn't say another word. I just watched my brother's face drop. He tried to laugh it off, but nobody laughed with him. And that's when it all started unraveling. No one moved for a few seconds after I said it. You could almost hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Kyle froze, staring down at his plate, pretending he didn't hear me. The laughter that had filled the room seconds before was gone. Just gone. Everyone's faces shifted at once, like they were trying to figure out if I was joking. Mom was the first to speak. Cindy, what do you mean you cover his rent? Kept my voice even. For the past 9 months, I've been paying $3,000 every month so he wouldn't get evicted. It was like I dropped a bomb on the table. Kyle immediately tried to recover. It's not like that. She helped me out once or twice, but I'm paying her back. I didn't even need to respond. Aunt Lydia turned toward him, eyebrows raised. $3,000 a month isn't once or twice. My uncle put down his fork. Wait. You're telling me you're living off your sister and buying a BMW? Kyle pushed back his chair a little like he was ready to argue. I had savings, okay? I've been working on projects. Things are picking up. You guys just don't understand how business works now. That's when my dad jumped in, clearly irritated. Enough. Kyle's doing something with his life. He's building connections, working hard, and not everyone gets that kind of hustle. He's young, he's ambitious. Let him enjoy his success. I looked at him, and I could feel my jaw tighten. You call that success? Dad's tone sharpened. You don't know how to support your family. You're always so negative. Before I could answer, Mom cut in. What savings, Kyle? He hesitated. You could see it. That small flicker of panic before he spoke. I had a little left from my freelance stuff, and I took out a small loan. It's manageable. Mom blinked. You took out a loan for a car? The entire room went quiet again. Grandma, who hadn't said a word all evening, finally spoke. You bought a car with borrowed money? Kay tried to brush it off. It's not a big deal. Everyone does it. You have to look successful to be successful. That was when Rachel, my cousin, leaned forward. So, you're in debt for a car you can't afford while Cindy's been paying your rent? Kyle turned red. I said, I'll pay her back. Olivia said quietly. When? With what? He didn't answer. Dad sighed and rubbed his forehead. You're all missing the point. He's out there taking risks, not playing it safe like some people. He's got vision. I didn't even respond. It was Mom who did. Vision doesn't pay bills, Mark. Her tone was flat. That alone made the whole table go still. Then she turned to Kyle again. Do you even know how much you owe her now? He looked down. I've kept track. I said, that's interesting because I have too. He didn't look up. Sarah, my other cousin suddenly remembered something. Didn't I offer you a job at my company a few months ago? You said you were too busy with clients. Guess those clients were imaginary. Uncle Mike nodded. Yeah, and I remember lending him $500 last year. Never saw that again. It started spreading around the table, one voice after another. Everyone had a story. Little moments that put together painted a very different picture of my brother, the one my dad refused to see. Kyle just sat there, his face pale, his hand gripping his glass like it was an anchor. Mom finally stood up and walked out of the room without a word. The sound of her footsteps upstairs was louder than anything else. Dad looked furious, mostly at me. You didn't need to humiliate him like that in front of everyone. I met his eyes. I didn't plan to, but I'm tired of pretending. No one spoke after that, not even Grandma. Kyle mumbled something about not needing to sit here and get attacked, grabbed his jacket and left. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the whole house. Dad followed him out a few minutes later. Mom didn't come back down. I stayed behind to help clear the table. My aunt and cousins helped quietly, no one really saying much. When the last dish was in the sink, Mom finally came down, her eyes red. She asked me softly, why didn't you tell us? I said because I thought if I gave him time, he'd learn. I didn't want to embarrass him. She nodded like she understood, but she didn't say anything else. I left not long after. When I walked out, the house that had felt so warm an hour ago suddenly looked empty, even with all the lights on. That night, Kay didn't call. Not that I expected him to, but I had a feeling this was just the beginning. Kay didn't call the next day or the next 5. I wasn't surprised. That's how he operates. He vanishes when things get uncomfortable, like it's a magic trick. Leave, ignore, wait for the mess to blow over, then reappear when he thinks people have cooled off enough to forget. That used to work, but this time, no one forgot. I didn't hear from Dad either. Just silence. Then 3 weeks later, I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was soft. Not angry, not dramatic, just flat, like she didn't have the energy to sugarcoat anything. Call me when you have a second. Kyle needs help. At first, I rolled my eyes. I figured maybe the dealership wanted their car back, or he got a flat tire and didn't know how to fix it. That would be very on brand for him. But when I finally called her back later that night, her tone told me this was different. She didn't even say hello. She just said, he's drowning, Cindy. It all came out at once. The loan he took for the BMW wasn't small. Not even close. $19,000, not including interest. He'd missed his first 2 payments. And the dealership had started calling every day. He was dodging them. The car insurance lapsed. He owed 2 months of back rent, and the landlord wasn't budging this time. Worse, the last 2 months of rent that I thought I covered, he never sent in full. He used part of it as a down payment for the car and figured he could catch up later. So now he was $3,000 behind on rent, deep in debt. The car was at risk of repossession, and he had nothing. No savings, no clients, just excuses that weren't landing anymore. When I asked Mom what Dad thought, she hesitated, then said he still thinks Kyle will turn it around. He said, it's just a rough patch. I had to laugh. A rough patch? This wasn't a bump in the road. This was a canyon. I told her straight up. I wasn't sending another dollar. She didn't argue. For the first time, she didn't defend him. She just said, then he needs to figure it out. 2 nights later, I heard a knock on my apartment door. It was late. I looked through the peephole, and there he was. Kyle hoodie. No jacket bags under his eyes. I hadn't seen him look like that since college finals week when he tried to pull 3 all-nighters in a row and ended up throwing up in a trash can. He didn't say anything when I opened the door, just stood there holding his phone and looking lost. I didn't slam the door in his face. I let him in. We sat in my kitchen, and for the first time in years, he didn't try to impress me. No sales pitch, no buzzwords. He just said, I screwed everything up. I don't even know how to fix it. I opened my laptop. I didn't yell. I didn't make a speech. I showed him numbers, loan payments, insurance estimates, rent, car maintenance, gas, food, cell phone bill. He just sat there, looking like someone had hit him with a sledgehammer. I told him straight, the only way forward was through work. Real work. 3 jobs, minimum. 1 wouldn't be enough. He needed to bleed for it, because that's what happens when you burn through every safety net. He didn't argue, just nodded. The next morning, I called Sarah. She'd offered him a warehouse job months ago. She was hesitant, but agreed to give him another shot. Then I called a friend who needed a dishwasher at her restaurant. Within a week, he was juggling both jobs. A few days later, he picked up a third, stocking overnight at a grocery store. It was brutal. One night, around 3 a.m., he texted me a photo of his shoes soaked with slush and just wrote, I can't feel my feet. I didn't reply with sympathy. I just said, keep going. Dad called twice that week. I ignored the first one, but when I finally picked up, he told me I was being too hard on Kyle. Said he wasn't built for this kind of labor, that he had a mind for business, not box lifting. I told him maybe he should have bought a whiteboard instead of a BMW. He hung up, but I knew I was right. For the first time, Kyle was seeing what consequences really cost. Slowly, I saw the change. He packed his own lunches, woke up on time, stopped posting fake luxury shots online, even started tracking every dollar in a small notebook. He wasn't perfect, but for the first time, he wasn't pretending to be a man. He was becoming one. Around week 6, things got quiet. No texts, no jokes, nothing. By the 3rd day, I called. No answer. The 4th, I texted, you alive? Still nothing. I figured he was burned out, until Mom called the next morning, voice shaking. He'd collapsed at work. They said he'd been pale, not eating, pushing himself too hard. At urgent care, he looked ghostly and 4 in his arm. He smiled weakly and said, didn't want to call. You'd say I told you so. I didn't. I handed him a protein bar and told him to eat. That night, Mom called a family meeting. Everyone came. Dad led, like always, talking about how Kyle had proven himself and now it was time to build him back up. Maybe refinance the loan or help him get a small apartment. Then he mentioned getting him a down payment for a practical car. That's when Kyle spoke up. I already sold the BMW. The room went dead silent. He said he'd sold it to wipe out most of the loan, just $4,000 left to pay, and he'd do it himself. He'd bought a beat-up Corolla, no loan, no pretending. Then he looked at me and said he'd pay me back every dollar. Dad muttered, you didn't have to do that. We'd have helped you. Kyle just said, that's the problem. You always did. For once, Dad had no comeback. Later, outside, I asked, you really sold it? He nodded. Drove it off the lot like a king. Sold it back like a man. A week later, I saw a $2,000 deposit in my account. The note said, first repayment. More coming. It wasn't just money, it was proof. He was finally giving instead of taking. A month later, he was still grinding. 3 jobs, barely sleeping, driving that old Corolla. Then something unexpected happened. He made a group chat, family for real this time. He sent a photo of a color-coded spreadsheet, his income, expenses, debt, everything. Then another message. Been tracking every cent for 7 weeks. Signed up for a financial literacy workshop. No, I'm not being held hostage. Anyone want in? Aunt Lydia said she'd join. Mom said she was proud. Even Grandma accidentally sent a voice note humming to Wheel of Fortune. Dad stayed quiet, but something had changed. At Sunday dinner, Kyle showed up early, brought groceries, helped cook, washed dishes, didn't check his phone once. After dinner, he pulled me aside and handed me a small envelope. No speech, he said. Just open it when you're home. I'm not scared of work anymore. I'm scared of wasting time. That hit harder than anything. Sunday dinner that week was different. No drama, no announcements. Kyle came early, helped set the table, and stayed to do the dishes. Then he stood up, no speech, no glass in hand, and said, "I want to thank my sister for not protecting me when I didn't deserve it, for letting me fall so I could learn to climb out." The room went silent. Even Dad didn't speak. Then Kyle looked at him and said, "You called me the hardest worker in the family. You were wrong. It was her all along." Dad just nodded. No sarcasm, just quiet respect. Later, Kyle walked me to my car and said, "I'm building something real now. When I hire my first full-time employee, I want you to help me pick them, because you're the reason I got here." Driving home, I realized how far we'd come. Kyle changed, not because someone saved him, but because no one did. And I learned that stepping back isn't giving up. Sometimes, it's the only way someone grows.